this thought that everyone driving a car is just subjected to whatever crazy search police want to is contravenes, yeah, absolutely contravenes the Bill of Rights.
Willie D. Live.
Did you ever like get somebody off and they went out there and raped somebody else and you was like, whoa?
You know,
Or even maybe you represented somebody in domestic violence and then they upped the ante and actually killed their
I don't have any
significant
clients where they killed someone after the fact. I've represented scores of people with domestic violence. Um, I don't have anyone that I've ever heard of committing another sexual offense, but most of the sexual offenses they were hired cases. They weren't appointed cases. So they were, people accused of something grievous, but in a relationship situation or, some sort of familial situation. And I didn't take a whole lot of them because I charged quite a bit. And, you want to pay me this big giant amount of cash, I will. And the truth is, most of them are resolved. Like, in the 2000s and 2010s, early 2010s, you could go get your client polygraphed and then let the state polygraph them if they pass. There were a lot of times when fake cases would unravel. So then what you're doing on a real case is you're just fighting to get a consequence that doesn't destroy their whole life, right? But, whether it's an intensive 10-year probation, so no, I've never had a circumstance. I'm sure people have. I did not. But I didn't again, most of my criminal defense was focused on drug cases through the entire 20 years that I did it. Or how long? Yeah, right, about 20 years.
Yeah. Surmise your Harvard thesis on the racial bias in terms of drug cases.
Okay, so I built my thesis around this case that came out of Texas, Supreme Court opinion called Atwater, and this was 2001, so it's been a minute. I ain't looked at it in a long time. But there was this case, Atwater versus Lago Vista. Lago Vista is this super wealthy lakeside suburban town outside Austin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a physician's wife who had kind of a long-running beef with law enforcement got pulled over and arrested for not wearing her seatbelt. Now, they ain't the people getting arrested for seatbelts. It's usually not a physician's wife. But a physician's wife can afford to fight it all the way up. And she fought it all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
Like a murder case, like she was fighting a murder case.
Right. And the substance of the issue was, is it constitutional to arrest someone and take them into custody merely for not wearing their seatbelt? And, what liberty interests are impugned? And the Supreme Court said, hey, yeah, that's fine. Now, the problem with that,
the Supreme Court agreed?
Said it's perfectly okay, right? And the problem with that is it ignores reality. It ignores how that, as I mentioned earlier, ignores how that is used in practice, right? What officers will do if they have something and they can arrest you for, and they want to search your car. They walk up and say, hey, can we search your car? And you're like, no, you're not searching my car. Fuck you, right? And it's okay, get out of the car. And they arrest you for whatever stupid thing, and they search your car as an inventory search. And it's horrible. Our founding fathers would have never tolerated even the concept of it. I mean, they wouldn't tolerate 99%. The tax rate that they went to war on was, 4% or something? And now our aggregate tax rate is over 50% in America. We're not the same country in any ways. But this thought that everyone driving a car is just subjected to whatever crazy search police want to is contravenes, absolutely contravenes the Bill of Rights, and it's repugnant. So the whole argument is when you look at the data, right, and you look at the number of cars searched, right, and so the popular term is driving while black, and the interaction, there is extreme bias, and there is no fixing the bias. Now, the law enforcement community and the conservatives would push back and say, well, there's this bias that exists because African Americans are greatly overrepresented in the commission of crime, which, when you're looking at violent crime, is a sad truth, right? If you look at per capita violent crime, it's very skewed. But that has nothing to do with prohibition. And when you look at how many black men get pulled over for nothing and get searched, right? And let's look at the downstream consequence of that, right? You have this negative police encounter where a completely innocent guy, and it happened to all kind of people. I don't know if you ever heard the story of Clyde Drexler when he came back from Portland to be on the Rockets. I was a policeman then. Famously was pulled over in his Lexus in Galveston County on the Gulf Freeway and hassled, right?
Yeah, I missed that one.
Clyde Drexler, at the time, one of the 5 greatest professional basketball players in the world, in his hometown where he went to the Final Four. It's just insane. So you have all these black men having these horrible negative experiences who didn't do shit, right? Just driving. And it creates this wedge that separates an entire segment of society, because you shouldn't look at cops like that. And it's all downstream from prohibition.